fifth day in Los Angeles Tuesday. Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman says while he supports the right to protest,
that's chaos. We need ICE. We need ICE. We need a secure border. It's like that's the thing. It's like that's a mistake for our party to pretend that we need to abolish ICE.
Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy says California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom should be grateful for President Donald Trump.
I think Governor Newsom dug up more snakes here than he could kill. He's got a city that is in large part out of control. And thank God the president and the federal government sent in troops.
But Democrats like Maxine Waters are saying don't believe what you see with your own eyes.
Nobody was shot. Nobody was killed. Get it in your head. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence.
Fox News contributor Joe Concha says Democrats want you to believe that this is the new normal.
So Democrats want us to believe that watching law enforcement being pelted by concrete, rocks, projectiles, fireworks, they want to say, all right, that's an acceptable level of violence. All of those businesses being ransacked and looted, ICE officers and their families being doxxed, that's apparently okay. That's the new normal. So it appears that everybody from Maxine Waters to Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, Hillary Clinton, almost every Democrat not named John Fetterman, they want looting and rioting and lighting scores of cars on fire to be that acceptable new normal.
Kyle Scheidler with the Center for Security Policy says these riots are being funded by left-wing groups with lots of money.
The equipment doesn't cost that much, and it's usually crowdsourced.
What
is expensive is legal aid, travel, hotel stays. These are things that are typically, that's where the money comes from the larger progressive foundations and begins to filter down into these community organizations.
The Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission hosted a roundtable at the SBC annual meeting in Dallas that featured Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, who told pastors that they ought to take it easy on politics in the pulpit. Steve Jordahl reports.
Senator James Lankford told the ERLC panel of the time he chided a pastor who said no Democrat would feel comfortable in his church. The pastor should preach with them in mind, he inferred. He said, quote, the church is getting drawn into the Fox News anger culture. AFA Vice President Ed Vitagliano disagrees.
So when Senator Lankford suggests that pastors should not preach or teach on issues that are quote unquote political, this doesn't make any sense from a biblical perspective.
He says the so-called separation of church and state wasn't an issue when the Bible was being written.
Back when the New Testament was written, there was no such thing as a nation where religion and politics were separate. All cultures were religiously oriented.
Vitagliano says the law itself is a moral guide, which opens the pulpit up to address practically any issue.
Any law that is written has a spiritual or religious component to it because you're telling people what they should or should not do.
He says following Lankford's logic, a pastor would have to avoid preaching against abortion or homosexuality. No Democrat is going to be comfortable with those sermons, nor should they be.
These are moral issues, and thus they are religious or spiritual in nature.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
And finally, Alabama used nitrogen gas to execute a convicted killer last night, marking the sixth time the gas has been used in the U.S.
Alabama executed 65-year-old Gregory Hunt after he spent more than 30 years on death row. Hunt chose nitrogen gas as his method to die. Hunt was put to death for the 1988 murder of Karen Lane, whom he briefly dated before breaking into her apartment, sexually assaulting and beating her to death. Her family calls the execution justice and the end of a decades-long nightmare. Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
I am thoroughly looking forward to our Weekend with AFA coming up in October, where we're going to be able to meet our supporters like yourself, to fellowship, to visit our facilities here in Tupelo, and to have everyone come together for a wonderful weekend.
It's a Weekend with AFA, Thursday, October 2nd through Saturday, October 4th in Tupelo, Mississippi. Speakers will include Abraham Hamilton III, Jenna Ellis, Tim Barton, Tim Wildman, and more. Register at afa.net/weekend.
Welcome to Today's Issues.
offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
Fred Jackson.
Hi there, Tim.
Chris Woodward.
Hello.
All right. I like your enthusiasm, Chris.
All right.
Yeah, but maybe say it a little louder next time.
Maybe dial it back to 4 cups of coffee before we do the show.
Okay. As I take another sip, yes.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We were just, it's summertime here, and we were debating the best way to the beach, highway-wise, and a lot of people. It's vacation season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People. I tell you, when you get a good deal, if you don't care about now, people. I'm talking about for anywhere you want to go on vacation.
Right.
Is at the end of August or 1st of September.
Mm-hmm.
After all the families with kids who have to get back and be in school have gone, left. You did this last year,
my
right?
wife and I, we went down in
October, right?
Yeah.
Went down to the beach in October, and you had it all to yourself, did you?
It was awesome.
Because the weather's perfect.
Weather it's way better. My wife and I have reached the stage in life. Now, people who get up in age may not all be the same way.
Right.
But we don't do hot at the beach.
Right.
Even when I was a young guy, a teenager or whatever.
And you were buff.
Yeah, well, I was kind of skinny. I don't know if I was buff, but you know, my friends and I, we'd go to the beach in New Hampshire. There's a little part of the state that hits the coast, and all the time. And, you know, we'd do stuff on the beach, throw football or whatever, but I never liked just laying out in the sun.
Right.
And, you know, with a blanket and getting sweaty, just
yeah, that didn't appeal to you.
Did not appeal.
No. Fred, you like going to the
love Destin. Now I've gone down in February. You know, get a good forecast, and I go down, and I'm there with everybody from Wisconsin to Minnesota. Everything's relative.
Right.
Yeah. Everything's relative.
Right.
You think Wisconsin, Minnesota in February. Right. Think Destin in February.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if the high is 59.
That's right. Take
your
pick. I'm like I don't like hot weather.
Yeah.
And certainly to stay out on the beach in hot weather.
Right.
No, there's just no way for that. Yeah. So I enjoy walking along with my parka.
Now, I like walking. When my wife went down to the beach, we like walking in the morning on the beach, finding the odd shell or what have you. But in terms of just laying out like people who get tans and sand everywhere, I don't get it.
Chris lays out, don't you, Chris?
I do.
Get you a sun. What do you call those things at home?
Suntan, tanning bed.
Tanning bed.
No, I don't have a tanning bed.
Bed.
I do enjoy being outside, especially this time of year. We do go to the beach every once in a while, but I'm happy with going to the hills or the mountains.
Head for the hills, Chris.
Yeah.
Well,
altitude.
You'll never hear me complain about hot weather.
No,
can't have.
That's true.
I've been here 15 years, and I've never heard you go. Man, it's hot.
I detest cold weather. I think
you do. You're on another level.
I know it's biblical.
Now, what is too hot for golf? Like for you, what is too hot for golf?
Well, my uncle famously told me when I was golfing with him one time, because I mentioned this, it was like 98 degrees, and I said, "Man, it's hot out here. I don't know, we should be out here or not." He goes, "Tim, it's never too hot to golf."
Period.
Said, duly noted. All right, it's what's today? Did I mention
today's
today?
June 11th.
June the 11th, 2025. And leading the news headlines is what?
President Trump today is celebrating a tentative trade deal with none other than China. He announced this today that the U.S. will get magnets and rare earth minerals and some other stuff from China under a new trade deal, and that tariffs on Chinese goods will go to 55%. This is a story on our website, afn.net. Details are still going to be coming in, But again, President Trump has announced a tentative trade deal with China. It would be a huge win for him if he were to do this. It would follow the trade deal with the UK and some other countries that we've been in talks with to improve trade. And in the immortal words of one president, Tim Wildman, stocks go up and stocks go down. But right now, the stock market appears to be responding very positively about the new tentative trade deal with China. The Dow, for example, is up 118, the NASDAQ 26, and the S&P 7. So your 401k
What about the
may
Chicago
be
Mercantile?
Give me a second and I'll get back to you. But I'll tell you this, gold is also up 15 points, so William Devane with Rosalind Capital is having a good day.
I need June corn.
Okay.
And what's the,
I'm sorry.
What's the pig?
Yeah.
Something that they sell
Feed the pig.
with
No,
pigs.
they do. Yeah,
It's
I
like
know what you're
pig.
saying.
I don't know what.
We need August hog prices.
Okay, hold on.
That's what we need.
He's our Les Nesbitt.
less Nesbitt.
I'm sorry, I messed up.
The price of hogs can fluctuate, but a whole hog typically costs between $600 and $850.
Right. All right. So
Back to you.
So, a trade deal with China to stop the tariffs
Yes.
is imminent.
Looking like it. They still have to sign off on some stuff, but both countries, which don't like one another, being near agreement on something is a positive thing for all Americans.
Well, in
Yeah.
China, Tim, as you've pointed out many times, China and the U.S. are kind of joined at the hip. We need each other in terms of economics, even while we are wary of each other when it comes to military and
We're both codependent. China and the U.S.
we're codependent.
Yeah.
Listen, you all this talk about tariffs and people talking about what kinds of things would go up in price makes you kind of go, I don't know. I sure kind of like that, cheap Tupperware or whatever you're talking about. It is nice to have stuff that's inexpensive.
Okay, so this is according to Fox News. Chris say President Donald Trump said on Wednesday, that's today, that the trade deal with China is done and subject to final approval between him and Chinese President Xi
Jinping.
XI.
Xi.
That's just how you pronounce
Xi.
that? All right.
You kinda like
Those are
Xi.
not pronouns. That's his name.
So anyway, well, now,
point.
That's a big deal.
Yes,
if
it
that's
is.
true, it's a big deal. A big deal.
And what I guess he must have posted this on Truth Social or whatever because it's in all caps.
Right.
Full magnets and any necessary rare earths.
You're quoting Trump in his file caps?
Yes, all caps will be supplied up front by China.
Yeah.
Likewise, we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities. I'm not sure I like that, but anyway, which has always been good with me. Trump continues. We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10%. Relationship is excellent.
Yeah, I will tell you, to give everybody an idea of how big and how necessary things like rare earth minerals are, we are surrounded in this room and we're using rare earth minerals to broadcast to people. Okay, everything from the headset to this phone, my computer, Brent's board, all this stuff. You somewhere today, America, are using something or touching something that involves a rare earth mineral, and we need those things. That's so to have an agreement on that is huge.
Yeah. Well, good deal.
Otherwise, we're going to have to invade Greenland.
Well,
don't they have rare earth minerals there?
I'm told they do.
And there's news on that front, too.
Yes. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, the news on that front is that in Denmark this morning, Copenhagen, Denmark's parliament today approved a bill to allow the United States to have military bases on Danish soil, a move that comes as U.S. President Donald Trump seeks to have a greater presence in the kingdom's semi-autonomous territory of Greenland. So this is a big deal, too. Everybody thought, remember when Trump started talking about Greenland?
Yeah.
The Danish people really upset with that. Who does he think he is?
Right.
But now it just has to be signed off. But now they're saying, yeah, we're open to more U.S. bases here in Denmark. And Greenland is semi-autonomous, as this AP story says. I think you're going to see more U.S. bases on Greenland. We have one there now. It's Air Force Base, I believe it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. All
right.
We wanted what President Trump and the militaries wanted because the North Pole,
yes,
and coming over the North Pole from Russia
And
Yes.
Santa.
and
I'm just saying, I want to get, there's more than just Russia.
right. You are exactly right. I'm not falling into that trap, the Santa trap. But there has been a need for more bases, and I have to believe that what Denmark has done is try to preempt any move on the part of Greenland. The people of Greenland, it's only like 50,000 people there. They would benefit greatly from having the presence of a U.S. military base because that pours money into the local economy. So perhaps Denmark is trying to preempt any kind of move on the part of Greenland to ink a deal or to go independent from Denmark so that they can ink a deal.
What if
with the
war
US.
breaks out between Denmark and Greenland? Whose side do we take there?
Well, I don't think Greenland has much of an offensive capability.
No.
Against Denmark?
Yes.
Huh? So the population of Greenland 2025 is 55, almost 56,000 people estimated. To your point, 50,000. So just 10,000, 12,000 more than Tupelo.
Yeah.
That live in the whole country. Greenland.
Where our flagship station is located here in Mississippi, Tupelo.
Yeah. So, and we don't have enough. There's no
rare earth minerals or
here that I'm aware of.
Right.
So the point is that Denmark, the country of Denmark, owns Greenland. Is that right?
No, the people of Greenland, they own it, but I think they would have to declare independence from Denmark in order to. It's kind of like, I guess, probably like the UK. You have this.
Okay, but the bottom line, whether it was Denmark or Greenland or whoever, the United States of America has worked out a deal to put a military base there. That's the bottom line. What we're saying here.
Well, it's actually the story actually says military bases. The Danes build to allow the United States to have military bases on Danish soil.
Okay, they got the land.
Yep,
they do.
You know, they just, you know what? The money talks, and that's what's happened here.
And you know what? Half the time, I'm going to admit something here. Okay,
Yeah.
I've already shared my heart about the beach.
You have.
Okay,
so share it again.
All right.
Share some more.
So half the time, I think President Trump is clowning around, and he's just trolling, and he's just trying to get a rise out of the Democrats.
Gulf of America.
Yes, Gulf of America. This thing with buying Greenland and Canada, the 51st state, I think that is trolling, Canada, the 51st state. But when he started talking about Greenland, I thought, oh, that guy, here he goes again. But he's serious, and it looks like he's got a win with this.
Yeah, and now in all seriousness, not only the advantage politically, so to speak, putting a military. We already have one, as you say, but having access to the land of Greenland to put American troops there and military helps us, with our reach around the world.
Yes.
Okay, so to speak, to be ready, and if we're in a hot war.
Yep.
God forbid, with Russia, for example. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it gives you, and Russia, they're all over the North Pole, speaking of the North Pole.
Right.
With their military, is what I understand. And so, this is you mentioned rare earth minerals, probably the natural resources and the minerals and all that, untapped in Greenland is enormous.
Yeah.
So 50,000 people in Greenland could potentially become very, very wealthy.
I think that's what
In fact,
they're seeing. I think they're seeing dollar signs. I think those little fishermen, you know what I'm saying, going out catching your salmon.
That might be why they don't want to become part of the U.S. Then they have to, pay up to Uncle Sam if they start becoming millionaires.
Yeah. But
that wouldn't deter me, Chris. Paying a little taxes. I was going to become a millionaire.
Democrats are going to say they need to pay their fair share now that they're part of the U.S.
Yeah. All right. So,
There is, by the way, one, as Fred said, one Air Force base in Greenland used to be formerly known as Thule
Sure
or
it was.
Thule.
You don't remember that?
Air Base, and I have read it. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I forgot about it, but they renamed it, and I guess Greenlandic is just one of those languages. It's just baffling to me because it's spelled. The new name is P as in Paul, Ituffik, and it's pronounced Bidufik. So I'm just going.
I think Trump's going to rename it Stonewall Jackson. Fort Stonewall Jackson there in Greenland.
Fort Stonewall.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Then just let the Democrats try to change that name.
Let them watch them heads spin off their
Yes.
body. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. What's your next story, Chris?
Well, the wins continue to come
Do
in
they
for
continue?
President Trump. Yes. In another story on our website, and I shared this just a moment ago on our Today's Issues Facebook page, Elon Musk is backing off from his feud with Trump, saying he regrets social media posts about Trump that, quote, went too far. Early this morning, Musk posted on X, "I regret some of my posts about President real Donald Trump last week. They went too far." So,
which one?
Well,
his posts.
There were several. I could take the rest of this break or this segment to rattle off the things that he had to say about Trump. But again, it looks like this feud between the two guys that were best friends 10 days ago appears to be ending, which would be good for Trump because it gets it out of the news.
Yeah.
I just
soap opera.
Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's not used to, kind of like President Trump.
Oh, they're two peas in a pod.
I mean,
they're pods in a pea.
When you are very wealthy and have built successful businesses, and your word is law, you're not used to people not doing what you think they should. So I think Elon Musk got very frustrated with the way politics works in D.C. I think he thought that President Trump ought to start lopping off heads in the Democratic Party, but that's
The
not really.
Democrat Party.
I mean, the Republican Party. And the Democratic Party, I'm sure. But that's just not the way politics works in D.C., and I think Elon Musk got frustrated, and he took it out on social media.
I'll tell you what happened.
Who doesn't do that sometimes?
Yeah, he is an eccentric kind of guy, talking about Elon Musk. When I say two peas in a pod, Trump and Musk are alike in that they're not used to taking no for an answer. And then you get both of them, somebody's going to end up taking a no. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
And so Trump, President Trump, and I'm a fan of almost everything he does. I think he's been an excellent president for us and leader. But his weakness is he acts like a child sometimes, a fifth grader. And so he got karma right here. He got into a public feud with a guy who has a microphone as big as his. Yeah. Most of the people that Trump goes after don't have the ability to fight back. For instance, when he called Nikki Haley bird brain all those times.
Yeah.
Well, that was a fifth grader. That's what I'm saying. Especially calling a woman that over and over and over and over again. And I'm going like, karma is you get into it and somebody calls you a name.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. Hopefully this is over because it's been embarrassing for both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk, he, as I say, eccentric guy. But I think what happened, the bottom line here, what happened, we don't know the behind the scenes. Maybe there's more behind the scenes that we don't know about. But Elon Musk spent and volunteered his time to help President Trump win, and then did the whatever it was, 5 months or 4 months of
Doge,
and pointing out all the waste and fraud in the government, federal government. And then what Elon Musk would say, President Trump would have an answer for this, I know. But what Elon Musk would say was, I do all this for you, Trump, and then you turn around and push a piece of legislation which is a bunch of waste and fraud.
And
and adds to the national debt by trillions and harms our country. That's what he would say.
And my Tesla stock took a nosedive while dealerships were being burned to the ground.
Right.
Because
So what he's saying, so Musk has an emotional and financial investment in what he's done for the last 4 or 5 months, and then he would say now, and then Trump comes in and supports a big beautiful bill that adds to our national debt by trillions and trillions of dollars. I'm just telling you that's what he would say, and he did say it. What Trump would probably say, Fred, is, yeah, but I'm trying to deal with the economy in the moment.
Yep.
And I can't solve all its problems, but we need to get our economy jump started bigger. That's probably what he would say.
Yeah, and I think Musk has come around. I think he went on a rant. He was very emotional, but he's come around to saying, wait a minute, my companies have a lot of contracts with the federal government. And Trump's the kind of guy who would say, we don't need that.
Yeah.
So I think everybody's calming down, and we're getting back to the point where the focus is going to be on this big, beautiful bill that the Senate is working on right now.
You like the big, beautiful bill, Fred?
Well, I haven't read all 1,100 pages, much like many Republicans.
I'm at 897, I think, as of last night.
I like the basic thrust of the bill is to continue the tax breaks that Trump brought in back in 2017.
Yep.
I like that idea. I mean, obviously, I think in this discussion, when Musk really went ballistic over this, I think the truth was brought home by senior Republican senators. The government is not a private company. And everybody has to realize that. There are so many players. A private company doesn't have to get everything passed through 400 politicians in the House and 100 politicians in the Senate. But that's the reality of our government. This is, it's a cake in the baking. And this is why it takes so long to do these things, and we all get frustrated. But what's the alternative?
Yeah.
The alternative is a dictator who decides everything.
Yeah, and as I've said, the system in D.C. is broken.
Yeah.
And you're not going to straighten that thing out overnight. It's going to take years of persistent and consistent effort to rein in the federal government. I'm not sure it can be done. But
I'm sorry.
You're not.
Yeah, the laughing,
that evil
the laughing
laugh
sounds like mockery of what you're saying.
I understand what the mockery's for. The very idea of reining in the federal government.
Over years.
Over years.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure it can be done. I'm not sure the members of Congress who have to do it, if it's going to be done, want to do it. But I'm speaking hypothetically.
Yes, you are.
And it deserved a little scorn. It did. The fact that I said it.
Okay. So we'll, yeah, you're right. Our federal government is basically out of control.
Yeah.
And so we will.
You're going to hear that laugh.
Yeah.
One day when you say something.
Right. We're gonna do. But whatever bad's going to happen is going to happen.
It's coming.
Happen. That horse has left the barn.
And locking the
train
door
has left
now.
the station.
That's right.
That ship has sailed. What else we got?
That pizza's been made.
And eaten. All right, we'll be back with more pepperoni in about 3 or 4 minutes here. Abraham Hamilton III, our constitutional lawyer,
is going to tell us if the Trump can call out the Marines.
Trump's calling out the Marines, and can he do that? We're going to ask Abe about that. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
At some time in his life, every person comes face to face with a difficult situation. None of us, regardless of our credentials, are spared of life's trying times. Therefore, any person is richer who has some foundation on which to stand when the storm rages high. How can we best face difficult situations? Well, the first word that's necessary here is dedication. Every person has some basis from which to view life, from which he faces difficult situations. For many, that basis is pure selfishness. What's best for me? What do I want to do? For others, the basis is genuine apathy. They don't care how the difficult situation turns out. But experience shows us that those who best cope with their difficult situations are those who have at the center of their life a genuinely deep and abiding faith in God. Difficult situations aren't near as difficult when a person knows that above all and beyond all is one who can and will guide us in our difficult situations. The author of the 23rd and 27th Psalms was only expressing an attitude shared by countless multitudes. Then the second word which is necessary here is decision. Study your situation carefully. Explore all possibilities open to you. Then make the decision which seems best. It may not be the decision you desire. In many cases, that option will not be open to you, but it will be the best decision possible in a difficult situation, and that's what you're searching for. Most often, our choices in difficult situations will not be between easy and hard decisions, but between hard and harder decisions. That's the reason they're difficult situations. The difficulty comes not so much in having a hard task to do, but in deciding the best way to do it. We can sympathize with a man who had to divide the eggs into 3 categories: small, medium, and large. Well, after 2 days, he quit, crying, "Decisions, decisions, decisions." Prayer needs to be a part of our experience prior to making a decision in a difficult situation. Difficult situations are hard enough in themselves, and certainly they are too hard to attempt without the help of He who has all knowledge. The final word in facing difficult situations is determination. Decision should be followed by action, else it only amounts to indecision. Once you make up your mind to act in a difficult situation, then immediately set the wheels in motion to carry out your decision. Perhaps the most miserable person in the world is the one who continually dwells on indecision. He will make up his mind, but he will not follow his decision with determination. He bounces to and fro, continually torn and twisted because of inaction from fear of wrong action. In facing our difficult situations, we must always be open to new truth, new light breaking in to make the path clearer. But likewise, we must be determined to stay with the highest and best route open to us until that new light breaks. We must be determined to do our best in a difficult situation. In the final analysis, that's all that any of us can do in any difficult situation, our best. And when we have done that, it is good enough.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. 1 Peter 3:14 through 16.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, Fred, Chris, and now we thought, well, we don't have enough people on this show, so we need another person. And we've added Abraham Hamilton III for the next few minutes. Good morning, Abe.
Good morning.
So we were talking about or were we? Were we talking off the air or on the air about the latest situation in? Why don't you set it up for us,
Sure.
Chris?
All right, so there is still unrest in Los Angeles, where President Trump several days ago sent the National Guard and now the Marines to the city of Los Angeles to deal with anti-ICE protesters or riots. The update with this story is that the mayor now, Karen Bass, former member of Congress, has put in place a curfew for L.A., but people are still concerned that what's been happening in L.A. will continue to be a problem and maybe even spill over to other cities. But what we brought in Abe to discuss was whether or not President Trump, or really any president, could deploy something like the Marines to try to put down protests or riots inside the United States. It's our understanding, Abe, that presidents have and do have the power to send in the National Guard, but the Marines is a different ballpark. So can a president do something like this?
Yeah. So my answer very simply is the president can't deploy the Marines to engage in any type of like law enforcement activity, any type. I mean, you have law, posse comitatus. You have other formal forms of law that prohibit domestic utilization of our national military. That is the purpose of the National Guard. But when you say Marines are being deployed, the simple question is, what are they going to do? You know, if they're there to provide like administrative support for the National Guard, then they certainly can do that. But they won't be roaming the streets and, you know.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, the law doesn't allow them to do that. So if that is what Marines were doing, I would be among the first to say that is an illegal utilization of the United States Marines.
So, in other words, you're talking about even the Army. It doesn't have to be just the Marines we're talking about, but the military can't set up checkpoints and say, hey, I want to see your ID. You're not supposed to be on this road. We're going to arrest you, pull your vehicle over. That's the purpose of keeping the military and the law enforcement in separate
and it goes back to the founding fathers, the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, when arguments were made concerning, well, we've just displayed the capacity using various militia and things of that nature to repel England. Well, what stops a despotic, tyrannical president from turning that same force on domestic citizens, you know, which is why there's that division between our national military. It's for external facing purposes, not for internal domestic function.
Okay. I'm just going to, here's my feeling on this. I'm going to share my heart, Ed.
Yep, share it.
Can I share it?
Absolutely.
This is a terrible idea President Trump has. Terrible idea. 700 active duty U.S. Marines, sending them to Los Angeles. What are they going to do? Marines are fighting machines. What are you going to give them, guns and tell them to go street to street, taking on the rioters? I mean, this is a terrible idea. Now, that's what the National Guard is there to, and this curfew is going to be a big help, okay? I think that the mayor has instituted.
Well, they've already ignored it.
And isn't the curfew like just a particular square mile?
Yes.
It's not the entirety of the
Right,
city.
that is correct.
The square mile.
Yeah, which is wise. I mean, you don't want to curfew the whole city of Los Angeles right now. I mean, but I think you use the National Guard, you use the state police, you use whatever you have to call in more guardsmen, but call in the Marine Corps to be deployed. Now, that's my opinion. You guys may not share it, and that's fine. Our listeners may go, "Well, you're wrong, Tim." Okay, this is saying in the Bible. Okay, we're not disagreeing on scripture here. I'm just saying I think this is a bad idea to deploy the United States Marine Corps, 700 active duty to Los Angeles, California, to do what?
That's the question.
Has President Trump answered that question? Has Pete Hex answered that question?
Well, not in direct terms.
Why not?
I can't explain what goes on in
You're the newsman, Chris.
I don't know that the only person that knows what's going on in Donald Trump's mind is God.
Yeah.
Fred.
Well,
Elon Musk, too.
The phrase that's been used is to restore order. I had two questions for you, Abe. Newsom has tried to make the point that it is the governor's responsibility. It is the governor that has the power to call in the National Guard.
Is his name Gavin George Wallace.
Okay. So you're saying the president has that right?
Yeah.
All right.
And has past presidents have.
Yeah. Okay.
Exercise that right.
Number two, though, President Trump, in some of the news conferences he's had in the last few days, he was asked the question, what about insurrection? Is that a justification for calling in Marines? That phrase is being used, that word is being used, insurrection. If there was, you'd have to define what an insurrection is.
Sure.
But if there was an out-and-out insurrection, would the president then have the right to send Marines in?
No.
No.
Still no.
Okay.
No, the president does not have the authority to dispatch our national military for domestic matters. That's why we have guardsmen. That's why we have state police. That's why we have local police officers, local law enforcement. That's one of the major distinctions between our nations and like foreign nations like Mexico and others. They don't have local police. It's Policia Nacional. It's the military and police all in one. In the United States of America, we have separated that intentionally so that we avoid that kind of conflation of national military force that could be turned on our domestic citizens.
Because, as an example, and I'm in agreement with Tim on this with regards to the Marines, there were Democrats who called January 6th an insurrection. They used that language. And that's where it gets tricky.
Really?
That's where it gets tricky. If you're going to be a president who wants to call out the U.S. military to put down an insurrection, it all depends then on how you define an insurrection. And it seems like the founders and then other laws, too, that were passed were to avoid that situation of turning the U.S. military into an instrument of terror against the citizens.
Yeah, that is. Again, the function and the purpose for having that division between domestic law enforcement, law and order keeping function is not the function of the national military, And so, to Tim's point, what are the Marines going to do? Like I said, I don't have a problem with them serving as administrative support for the National Guard, but why describe it as a deployment of active duty Marines that are going to be doing administrative support? I don't get that.
All right. So Newsom yesterday went to court. We haven't got a decision yet. He went to court to say what Trump did with the National Guard is illegal. Now, of course, he probably went judge shopping like Democrats have been doing.
That's why I refer to him as Gavin George Wallace Newsom. I mean, you literally have the exact same situation to where the federal law was passed, congressionally enacted federal law was passed. The state government refused to abide by federal law, kind of like federal law says illegal immigrants need to be deported, things of that nature. State government is refusing to do so. The president at that time was JFK with George Wallace. Now it's President Trump with Gavin Newsom that dispatches the National Guard to help to implement federal law, just like JFK did with George Wallace. And unfortunately, Gavin Newsom is doing the George Wallace remix role pretty well.
Hey, let me ask you this. You had a similar situation in New Orleans that you experienced with Hurricane Katrina. Now, not civil unrest because of protests, but because of just the situation on the ground in terms of the flooding and people displaced and things of that nature. And you had some of the looting going on and so forth and so on. But in a situation like this, what's the chain of command? Who has ultimate authority? Does the National Guard? Do the Marine Corps? Do the county sheriff? The city mayor of Los Angeles? Who has authority?
Well, obviously, the president in dispatching and deploying the National Guard has his role with the National Guard, but you would hope you have interaction between federal law enforcement and that chain of command is established within that internal framework. With the situation of Hurricane Katrina, you had the Army Corps of Engineers were present for engineering purposes because the Army Corps was responsible for help to design the levee system. But the Army Corps of Engineers weren't going street by street doing any policing or anything that nature. It was a combination of state police, the National Guard, and local police officers that were doing that, and they were working under the authority of the state governing forces under
governor.
Yeah, under the governor working with the Louisiana mayor, the New Orleans mayor at the time. So the governor was one calling the shots in coordination with the mayor.
I got you.
My personal opinion is that the U.S. Marine Corps, I just looked up the numbers. There are only 168,000 plus in the Marine Corps.
Total.
Okay, total. This is a specialized branch of the military. They're too valuable as Tim said, they are trained
to kill
people and break things. And you don't put them that are that kind of specialized, you don't put them in a situation for which they're not trained. I doubt they're able to carry live ammunition. So even if they're walking around with their weapons, I don't think they're able to defend themselves if a large group of people attack them, and you don't want to put them in that position. And I don't like calling out the military for this kind of thing because they're just not trained for it, and you could wind up, if they did have live ammunition, these guys want to go home and see their families too. You could have another Kent State kind of situation where rioters get shot and killed.
According to the Associated Press, I'm reading, the 700 Marines arrived in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area. They have arrived, but they haven't been called to respond to the protest as of Tuesday afternoon, and were only there to protect federal officials and property, the Marine Corps commandant said. That's fine. I still disagree fundamentally, constitutionally, with deploying them in the first place for any reason whatsoever, although Abe gave out maybe one that's acceptable, that is some kind of administrative role, but 700 is too many for an administrative role, sounds like to me. So anyway, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully all this dies down and fades away.
I do have one additional question.
Go ahead.
For Abe. So we know that the First Amendment gives us the right, American citizens, to peaceably assemble.
Key word.
Okay. So what we're seeing because all these people who are defending it, even many on the left, in the media and the Democrats, they're saying, well, Maxine Waters says it's peaceful. Okay.
She's such a bastion of truth teller.
Yes. So you're not allowed, even if you are protesting something that you think is a legitimate wrong and you're petitioning the government for a redress of grievances, you're not allowed to riot and burn things and loot, right? That's not considered protected by the First Amendment.
No, the First Amendment, as you rightly said, protects American citizens' rights to peaceably assemble. And I would just take issue with people conflating these riots with petitioning the government for redress of grievances, because petition is a term of art that has a specific application. You don't petition on the streets. You use the courtroom for that purposes. But the First Amendment protects the right to peaceably assemble. The moment an assembly moves over into non-peaceability, you've crossed the threshold, you've crossed the line into criminal activity. So when you have burning property, when you have destroying other people's property, when you have attacking police officers, when you have bricks and concrete blocks being hurled at people, you've exited the realm of peaceable assembly and you've entered the realm of criminal rioting, which is why the local law enforcement should be involved in helping to maintain law and order by helping the citizens to understand you have the right to peaceably assemble. You can shout, you can do these other things, but you cannot violate the law. You cannot break people's property, cannot destroy people's property, cannot assault individuals, cannot attack anybody. And once you've crossed that threshold into criminality, you should be treated as a criminal.
All right, and just one last question, because this is very helpful, Abe. So let's say the riots, whether this is organic or whether this is staged and being paid for, all those kinds of questions aside, what if this gets out of hand and exceeds the ability of local law enforcement and state police and even the National Guard to contain it?
And you're going.
Huh?
You're going to be called up. Calling up Ed.
What can the government? What do you do at that point?
Yeah. So when you say inability to contain it, are you limiting to the city of Los Angeles? Is it beyond the state? Does it bleed over into other states?
Yes, all of that. Let's say in Los Angeles, the numbers continue to grow. Mm-hmm. I think they arrested like 29 people yesterday. Mm-hmm. That's a fraction of what's there. Mm-hmm. Let's say hundreds of thousands of people, and Los Angeles is being shut down, and then this spreads to other, because it's just going to happen in blue states and blue cities. I don't
I'm going to
believe.
say, I'm pretty sure it won't bleed over into certain areas. It won't get into Idaho. It won't get into
Right.
other areas.
So
because-
what happens under those circumstances? Is that, do you declare martial law? I mean, and do you think that's what the left, the
Who would
radical left
declare?
is
Who would
after?
declare martial law?
Yeah.
The president, right? If it's
Martial law
or
for the
government.
whole country?
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking. Let's
Yeah.
say it spreads. Let's say it spreads to Chicago and New York City and Detroit, and the cities are burning, and law enforcement.
We already saw this movie.
Yeah.
Like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Occupy Wall Street or these
BLM riots.
Okay, let me
All
be
right,
more.
I'm sorry.
Let me. Be
I
more
was
specific.
shutting my mouth.
No.
And let you converse
that
with
was-
Abe, and Abe can agree with.
Though, no, I'm not saying you don't have to shut your mouth for the president.
Shut my mouth.
What I'm trying to describe is a
Hypothetical.
situation beyond all this, because in these areas where you have those little zones,
Yeah.
that in 2020, the summer of the police decided to take a hands-off approach because they did not want confrontation. Okay, what if this is not just, hey, we're setting up our little zone here, we're taking over the city?
Yeah. So you would have to have law, like you just described, like the Summer of Love and like Portland and other places. The police decided not to enforce existing law.
Right.
So in order for this to happen, as you're describing it, you have to have law enforcement officers who are paid, trained, and swear oaths to enforce existing law who agree not to do so. And so then, if that continues to spiral, I can assure you that you won't have other locales that would agree with that. You'll have others who will step in. And as much as we have, criminals and all, criminals will not be able to outgun trained law enforcement officers. I've seen what law enforcement officers have in terms of their capacity to restore law and order. And I am very confident that if you have one locale of rogue law enforcement officers, that will not metastasize beyond that one locale. I'm confident of that.
All right.
But in terms of martial law declarations, it would have to come from a governor or of a president. But that is not a realistic. In many ways, I really think many regressives want to provoke President Trump to do something, a misstep of that form.
Yeah.
So that they can say, "See, we told you all along."
Yeah, I
He's
hope
just
he
an
doesn't fall for that
authoritarian. Yeah, and I don't think he will.
You can't.
I pray that he won't.
Yeah. You couldn't martial law America anyway.
No.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Huh? I can name 10 people right now who aren't going to participate. That's only my family members.
And my family members too.
That's called the not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Not gonna do it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this is going to quell down. I know that people are saying watch for Saturday, but the BLM riots from, what was that, 2020? When was that?
I think it was 2020. After
They were
George
much
Floyd.
they were much more extensive. At least now this is maybe early. And you do have your Antifa types and so forth, but anyway, what people are reacting to, I think, is the people who are doing the rioting. Some of them are emotional because they have family, friends, or whatever that been affected by people being arrested and deported, and so I do think it's organic. But some people say no, it's all planned. I think maybe it is some.
Maybe
planning.
it's both.
Maybe it's both. But we'll probably know more this time next week whether this is going to spread across the country. I know that we had some demonstrations in New York and in Austin or San Antonio.
Austin.
But I told Ed during the show prep, there's always protests in New York.
That's
Just
true.
depends on what day of what the cause is for the day. But they're not burning down the city, okay? And Mayor Adams, quite frankly, said we're not going to tolerate anything like that. Protests like what we see going on in
Who's a former police officer himself.
in seeing going on. And I want to know, when you see a story like this, Chris, maybe you know the answer, or somebody here on the panel knows the answer. You see a story like this, what's happening in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the second largest city in America. You're talking about in the metropolitan area, probably 15 million people or more, maybe more than that, 20, I don't know, in the greater Los Angeles area. Are we talking about widespread rioting going on over, half the city?
No, it's very centralized.
Yeah.
It's just in that one where the curfew was implemented. It's just in that one little area. I'm saying little in terms of geographic.
So this is a small area, tiny, comparatively speaking.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
But it might be a place that you would drive to get to a specific part of town.
Well, my question is, sometimes news stories get blown out of proportion because there's so much coverage of it, when in fact it's only involving 300 people in a 1 mile area. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you say Los Angeles, you're going like, well,
and you look at the images.
well, the whole city's burning down.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's a small area, tiny area, comparatively speaking. when
And
this is going on.
population-wise, Los Angeles proper is 3.7 million. The greater Los Angeles area is 18.6 million.
Is that all?
Yeah.
And what did I guess?
You guessed maybe
15 to 20.
You said maybe 20?
Yeah. There was to your point, there are people out there that are saying, media is misleading you over the violence and the extent of all this yesterday. And I'm not saying I agree with this lady. I'm just bringing it up as one example. Yesterday, there was some lady on X, formerly known as Twitter, she had a video of herself like blowing bubbles and what was supposedly burning down Los Angeles or whatever. So there are people out there that are saying, Trump's the showman. He's doing this for publicity and headlines or whatever. And LA's not burning, despite what Fox tells you and all these kinds of things. You will see more of that in the coming days, I guarantee you.
Yeah, if it bleeds, it leads. In the news, that's the news service for many people. So,
And I think the news service has a vested interest in trying to create a counter narrative to the Trump got elected to deport illegals, and they're trying to say, well, not everybody's in agreement with that, when a large percentage of the American people are in agreement with it, including legal immigrants to our country.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
I watched a debate 2 nights ago. There's a vacancy in Arizona where a Democratic congressman passed away back in March, and they're having a primary for both Republicans and Democrats. And so on Monday night, they had the primary between 3 Republicans running for this Democrat's seat. And then last night, they had 5 Democrats in their primary.
You said they had a primary. Did they have a debate?
Well, they're having a primary debate.
Oh,
the
a
primary is
primary
coming up.
debate.
Excuse
Okay,
me.
okay.
Anyway, the 3 Republicans are all in agreement that what Trump is doing is right here. And then last night, the Democrats were like, Trump is terrible. He's a dictator. So that issue is it was the first question in both debates in Arizona. Hey, what do you think about what's going on in L.A., which is far away from their district here? So it is a national issue, not only something we're talking about on this show, but even in elections far away from the scene.
yeah.
Well, I've had all my questions answered.
Have you now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Have you shared your heart enough?
I've shared some of it. There's
Okay.
more in there, Tim.
Okay.
You don't want
Well,
to
save it. We don't want you to share your whole heart right now. Huh? There'll be time enough for that.
Yes. I'll make sure the whole world can see what goes on
Time
inside
enough for
this
counting, Ed, when the dealing's done. Huh? You mean sing the rest of that?
Not really.
Or leave it to Kenny Rogers?
I didn't even. Which Kenny? The normal face or the?
Oh
I
man,
probably shouldn't have
see,
said that.
I didn't want to get into body shaming. You started that. Talking about Kenny Rogers, the late Kenny Rogers. Guys passed away.
Oh man,
talking about.
You got to know. You got to know when to let your face just be your face.
You got to know when to close out the hour.
You got to know when
And
to
now's
Botox
the time.
and know when to not Botox.
All right, we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Did I say that out loud?
For better or for worse.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The enemy has pulled out all the stops to try to destroy the family for a very long time. That's why the American Family Association stands boldly in the gap to protect and strengthen this God-breathed institution. Visit AFA.net today and discover the resources available for you and your family. And if you would, please take a minute to show your support. That's AFA.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. California Governor Gavin Newsom is blaming President Trump for the riots in Los Angeles after a judge rejected Newsom's motion to block the Marines and National Guard from deploying.
This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes.
But the president says the federal troops are helping save the city.
Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last time we gave them a little additional help, you would have Los Angeles would be burning right now.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says the California governor seems to be clueless.
It's evidently Gavin Newsom has not been out to the scene. He has not turned on the television set to see the incredible amount of violence that is happening in Los Angeles. President Trump is going to make America safe again. We're going to protect Americans, and that includes Californians. If Gavin Newsom isn't going to protect them, we are.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass made this false statement about troop deployments.
I think that's a problem with the administration, because to come in such a massive way and to make the announcements that all of this was going to happen and then not communicated with the local jurisdiction as to when, what, how, why is really problematic.
But the problem is that's a lie. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons says ICE notified local authorities 48 hours in advance. This is Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin.
She's absolutely being dishonest. Todd Lyons is right. We had the receipts to prove it. We notified local LAPD that these ICE operations were occurring at least 48 hours in advance. And the American people should know some of the individuals that we picked up on these ICE operations. Child rapists, child molesters, murderers, convicted arsonists, truly the worst of the worst on the streets. But my message to Mayor Bass and to Governor Newsom and these rioters that they back is that ICE will not be deterred. We will not be intimidated by this rioter violence. We will keep going. We will only ramp up ICE operations, and we will continue to get these criminals off of our streets.
Immigration enforcement has arrested an illegal alien with a criminal record for throwing a Molotov cocktail at police in Los Angeles.
Homeland Security officials say Emiliano Garduno Galvez has been arrested for attempted murder after they say he threw a Molotov cocktail at police June 7th in Los Angeles. Galvez had been deported before and has a prior for grand theft in Anaheim, as well as a DUI in Long Beach. Hundreds of people have been arrested in connection with the LA riots, and at least 5 officers have been injured. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
And finally, a private university is hosting a, quote, queer flourishing event this week. More from Bronson Woodruff.
The event this week was set up by the LGBT alumni chapter at Fordham University in New York. It's a private Jesuit institution. Campus Reform reports the event has 2 professors to help guests who feel at risk or under threat due to the steps the Trump administration has taken since the beginning of this year. Part of the event's description says, quote, some LGBT plus New Yorkers are renewing their passports and checking out escape routes to other countries, fearing their marriages will be revoked or their children taken away from them or other travesties. Some have already left, end quote. Zachary Marshall, Ph.D., is editor-in-chief of Campus Reform. He said, in effect, he thinks it's sad that Fordham is supporting the notion that a person gets value from identity rather than merit or character.
Queer flourishing, I think, is a way to make everything about being queer for people who have nothing else going on. From what I understand, the idea of flourishing is connected to the human endeavor to try your hardest and be fully rounded people who are successful in life, however we measure success. I don't see how sexuality has anything to do with that.
Fordham's website describes this as a conversation that will be a, quote, proud evening of deeper dialogue and socializing. Marshall said it's concerning to him that Fordham's not teaching students how to flourish as human beings by virtue of their humanity. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
The political climate in America has changed. We've been given a reprieve, and we have to work together to take advantage of that momentum and effect even more cultural and spiritual change. We can rebuild America. The American Family Association is working to do just that, and when you join with your support, it helps maximize the impact. As our thanks, we'll give you a DVD of biblical financial advice from Rob West called Biblical Stewardship. Please visit afa.net and get started today.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Welcome back to today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, Fred, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us. Good morning, Brother Steve.
Good morning, everybody. This is a sign for Ed. He's not looking at me, but that's okay. It's for later.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing?
We're doing good.
Good.
Doing good. We're riot free.
Riot
free here in the studio.
But I'll tell you what,
we still have half an hour to make that.
The leadership tried to take that popcorn machine away. We might have riots.
Then I'll
today
call out
today.
the Marines.
That's right.
I have to. Nobody's getting my popcorn machine right there.
That's right.
Our popcorn machine. It's shared.
It's
we take a communal view here of the popcorn machine. Just
yes.
Don't get the last of it if I'm coming for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think they know that. The staff knows that by now.
Do they? Yeah.
If you're going to take the last before today's issue,
right? Yeah. Don't.
Somebody
do that.
better make some more.
Don't do that.
I think Tim is like me and my wife. We have an agreement with my wife. It's like what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours.
Yes.
So.
All right, Fred. Do you want to say anything about what we talked about? We've muted you the last 30 minutes.
No, I was listening to Abe's expertise in the law. And it's really important right now because, as we mentioned, Newsom has gone to court. He believes that Trump had no legal right to call out the National Guard. Abe says he has every right to call out the National Guard. But there is the case about the Marines. And I understand, from Abe and from my understanding of the law, that is going to be the question point. Now, I still am not clear. I do not believe the Marines have arrived on the streets where these protests.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, they have. They've been in a holding area. Actually, they talked about they're training the Marines on how to do the crowd control and whatever they may be required to do at this holding area. So until the Marines arrive on site, I don't think Newsom has a case against the Marines. They haven't done anything yet.
I heard the discussion, and Abe was, as all of you all know, he was saying that they can go in a support role. Didn't we send Army or Marines or some military down to the southern border at some point to relieve ICE of the administrative function down there so that they could go after more criminals?
There were members of the Army who went down to help out in building detention centers.
That would be the support role that Abe was talking about. That would be illegal use.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's more debatable there because you're talking about the use of the military to prevent a foreign invasion, you could argue, especially during Biden's time when there was just people pouring in by the millions, right? I mean, 15 million people came in because Biden said, y'all come from around the world. But anyway, using the Marine Corps here is a bad idea, in my opinion. And you could do the same thing with the more National Guard troops. Yeah, you could do the same thing. State police, whatever the case may be. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully, it quells and goes away and dies down. There's a curfew now. There wasn't one. There's a curfew now in order by the mayor of the city of Los Angeles. That should be helpful.
Yes.
Right. So we'll see what happens over the weekend. Notice that we don't have a lot of rioting in America in January. Have you guys noticed this?
Yes.
Now Jesse Smollett, he ran into problems.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you know what? He was kind of asking for it, being in MAGA country.
Yeah,
in Chicago.
Yeah, downtown Chicago.
In January in
Should have
Chicago in the middle of the night.
You're going to run into some MAGA fanatics.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
You're going to run into some red-hatted MAGA folks in downtown Chicago, waiting for some poor soul to come out of Subway.
You meant red-hatted.
What did I say?
Red-headed.
Oh, yeah, red-hatted.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me there.
What's even more stark is you can count the number of riots on 0 hands that were during the Biden administration. They don't come out and, like Code Pink completely went away after George Bush left office. You didn't hear about them. Now, the issues didn't change, but they won't.
Well, and Barack Obama deported a lot of illegal immigrants.
More than Trump in some cases.
There were not protests, wall to wall.
No.
For that.
It's not about deporting immigration.
You're right.
It's
not about
destabilizing
47.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's about
Donald Trump.
about 47, 45/47.
Yeah.
Yep.
Next story.
So the Southern Baptists are meeting in Dallas for their annual meeting. They're having a convention, the Southern Baptist Convention. But on Sunday, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission convened a roundtable, and they invited Oklahoma Senator James Lankford to be a part of this roundtable. And this was right before, on Monday was the pastors' conference. So this was a bunch of pastors mostly gathered in this room. And this is what, I want to read you what James Lankford said as reported by the Christian Post. I've been promised a copy of the video, but it won't be ready for a day or two. So this is what this is the Christian Post. Lankford sees the push for pastors to talk more about politics from the pulpit as a system of the current American political climate rather than a biblical call. Quote, I've talked to so many pastors who say that they're struggling in their church because they're attacking them, because people are attacking them, saying, quote, I want you to talk more about politics, he said. They want more anger. They want you to go after people. He shared a story from a couple years ago when someone told Lankford that, quote, no Democrat would feel comfortable in his church. Lankford added, I think he expected me to laugh. Instead, I said to him, you're telling me half of your city can't come and hear the gospel in your church? Why are you doing that? The anger of our culture is bleeding into our congregation, and it's counter to the gospel. And then calling Titus 3 the description of how to be able to impact the culture, Lankford added, it is completely counter to how it's done in most places, even among the church right now, and I'm afraid the church is getting drawn into the Fox News anger culture rather than getting drawn into the leadership of the Holy Spirit. 1, 2, 3, go.
Well, this got sent around yesterday, and I get upset by this kind of talk. Now, first of all, James Lankford is a Christian. My understanding, he's a Christian, so he's a brother in the Lord,
yep.
And so this is just a disagreement I have with a Christian brother. Okay. First, let me just say, I don't ever hear this kind of talk when you're in a church that leans left and the discussion is about racism, okay, or questions about equity or illegal immigration. Okay, nobody says don't talk about that from the pulpit because you're just falling into the CNN anger echo chamber. Okay, nobody says that when the issue is something on the left. Second of all, let me just say, Senator Lankford is correct that Christians ought to be in control of their emotions. Sinful emotions like anger and hatred and or sinful anger, I should say. Not all anger is sinful. Bitterness, all those kinds of things, malice, name calling, all of that is sinful conduct. And so pastors ought to be able to preach on issues that are in the news that touch the Bible in terms of worldview and biblical teaching and instruct the people to handle those disagreements in a Christian way. And let me just finally say, and we others can certainly chime in here, we only hear people like what Senator Lankford said. We we only hear people talk about this when the issue is something like abortion or homosexuality. If a pastor preaches on adultery and that makes adulterers in the congregation feel awkward, nobody tells them to stop preaching about it. Okay? Part of awkwardness, quote unquote, may be conviction. And if people feel convicted, you're not helping them by no longer preaching on what the Holy Spirit wants you to preach on just because they feel uneasy about the subject matter. So that's my well-reasoned, not calm, not angry answer to Senator Lankford with all due respect.
Fred, you had some thoughts when you read this.
Well, I think down through history, let's go back to the start of the church. Was Peter concerned that when he spoke to the Jews of his day that Jesus was the Christ, that made some Jews very angry?
He said, Jesus Christ, whom you crucified.
Whom you crucified. So should Peter have stepped back and be concerned about, I might offend some people by saying that? Look, I don't think you should stand at the door of a church and say, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Right. No. But at the same time, a pastor ought not to shy away from preaching about the sin of abortion, about homosexuality, dealing with transgenderism, because I might offend somebody. You cannot do that. And if you do that, then you're saying that the power of the gospel is in me. No, the power of the gospel, they're not mutually exclusive. You can talk about abortion in your message and the sin of abortion, but present the gospel.
Yeah.
In fact, they quite go together. I mean,
they do.
God, forgiving God and forgiveness brings
the moment you say, I cannot talk about that sin because I might offend the political views of somebody. I mean, you're excluding the Holy Spirit.
And you are letting politics enter the church, because politics is now chilling the pastor's speech.
Mm-hmm.
Paul was buying into the Caesar tonight anger of the echo chamber. Caesar.
Oh, Caesar's. Yeah, Caesar.
Next story, Steve.
All right. I bet you never heard of a politician being free and loose with the facts, have you? So we've been talking all morning about the riots in L.A. and the National Guard or the Army and everything showing up and how to quell those violence and maintain calm. It comes as no surprise that Democrats are blaming Donald Trump. This was Nancy Pelosi this morning at a press conference talking about the calling in of the National Guard. I want you to hear what she says, and then I have another piece to play for you that kind of
calling out the National Guard when.
Well, she's talking about that it's wrong to call out the National Guard.
Oh, okay.
For now, in L.A. or at least the Army, but she's trying to make the case that Trump is contradicting himself. Let's just listen to cut 16. Oh. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you I loaded him. Let's talk among us. I'm sorry, Brent. Do you see 16 and 17 in there? Because
so just to make sure we understand, if we can get the clip, this is Nancy Pelosi. We're going to hear two clips of Nancy Pelosi.
I did load them, but
one's all I can take. Sorry.
Even if she's contradicting herself.
Sorry.
Are the clips there, Brent, to load, or do I have to? Just move on.
So, okay. So we're about to hear Nancy Pelosi talking about Trump pulling.
We're about to hear Nancy Pelosi talking about Trump, cut 16.
On January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it. Not only would he not do it, when law enforcement people were being harmed, some later died, he would not send it in That day, he didn't do it. He forgave those people. Now his people want to raise money for them, and yet, in a contra-constitutional way, he has sent the National Guard into California.
Wow.
That's
That
just
is
a bald-faced lie.
Yeah.
I think her $30 a pint ice cream has gone to her head.
In fact, it's reported that Donald Trump begged for more law enforcement to be on the streets during his
January 6th.
January 6th. And Nancy Pelosi refused. And this is exactly what Nancy Pelosi said on January 6th. This is video taken by Nancy's daughter, who's a
documentary
filmmaker. She was recording in a car that Nancy Pelosi was in driving away from the Capitol during the riot at the Capitol 17.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. Should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient
No,
resources.
that is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepared for more.
Well,
so she's taking responsibility
for not
having more Capitol Police or the National Guard.
That's right.
Yes.
But it's Trump that.
That whole day was really weird.
Yeah.
As far as how everything unfolded and so forth. But we will. Yeah, she's saying she takes responsibility.
Yeah, for there not being the National Guard.
What's she upset about Trump deploying the National Guard to California for?
The governor is supposed to request the National Guard, in her opinion. If the governor doesn't request it, Trump doesn't have the authority to send
That's not
them in.
true, as Abe said.
Right.
There have been governors who have refused to. Now, there may be some question about, a federal law. In the case of George Wallace, federal law was passed requiring the integration of schools and colleges and universities. George Wallace famously said, I'm not going to let them in, but the president superseded the wishes of the governor by having the National Guard troops there to fulfill the law that was passed. That might be a little bit of a different situation in Los Angeles in that I'm not sure a federal law has been passed in terms of protests in the street. Certainly, ICE has the authority to go and arrest people. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, again, you have to remember how this all started. ICE agents went in to arrest people for violation of U.S. law. When they did this, they started being met with physical resistance by multiple people, maybe hundreds, who knows, with violent acts. Okay, like bricks thrown at them and cars smashed, and I mean it got
on fire.
It got ugly quick. So in response to that, then because the ICE is a federal agency, then President Trump, of course, the L.A. local police and the sheriff's department, they got involved too with riot police and so forth. These people began to block streets, stand in the street, block traffic on major highways. So that's how this escalated. So that's when President Trump called in the National Guard, which he had every right to do, and he should have, to restore order. If the governor wasn't going to do it, and because there were federal agents who were being attacked, you have to have federal police to stop the attacks, or federal, you know what I'm saying?
Right, ICE agents. And
ICE agents. So that's how the story unfolded. It wasn't like Trump just called up the National Guard out of nowhere for no reason, just to intimidate people or just to say, hey, I'm going to show my force here with California and provoke a fight with Governor Newsom and the mayor of Los Angeles. That wasn't what provoked the fight. Was the attacks on the ICE agents to begin with, which I didn't ever hear Governor Newsom, or I haven't heard everything he said, but I haven't heard him or Mayor Bass condemn that.
Right.
That's right.
Condemn what started all this, which was now they would say No, what started is ICE agents arresting people in the first place.
Yes.
Okay. Because by they, I mean people like Gavin Newsom and most of the uber liberals in California, they would say, we don't want ICE because we want to allow people to live here, even if they're here, quote, undocumented or illegally, and they shouldn't be arrested no matter what crimes they've committed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what the uber liberals.
Yeah, because it's a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state.
Right.
They're saying that the people are out there just having fun watching cars burn. So don't send the people.
Yeah, that was actually somebody on a local like ABC television.
I still have it. We could play it. This is a local broadcaster on ABC 7 in Los Angeles. Got 15.
Large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
Yeah. You know,
just having fun watching cars burn.
I just don't know what to say. That just seems like a skit on Saturday Night Live or something.
I had to double check that it wasn't AI. I mean, I thought this is something that, would be like Babylon Bee stuff.
If they were burning his car in his driveway, he'd be calling the cops. Yeah, provoke a confrontation. They're burning my car.
Right, that's true. Yeah, it's just silliness. This kind of reminds me of that time the CNN reporter during the BLM riots.
Mm-hmm.
Remember he was on with Chris Cuomo? When Chris Cuomo was on CNN and they were talking about the riots, and he said, yeah, it's mostly peaceful protest. And in the background was buildings burning down.
Yeah.
It was like, are you hearing yourself here?
Yeah. But this is the way liberals are programmed.
Right.
Don't deal with reality.
No, if it's their cause, it's just, and the ends justifies the means.
Yes.
And so, even I remember Chris Cuomo on CNN at the time she said, "Show me where protests have to be peaceful."
Yes.
Remember that?
Remember, there was like a junior high or high school student who said, "Yeah, I'll show you. It's in the Constitution."
It was eating the crackers or whatever he's eating.
Yeah.
He was on social media answering Chris Cuomo, but it was very funny. It was like, "Yeah, it's in the Constitution. It says the First Amendment says peaceable
assembly."
What do we got next? We got a minute to go.
All right, ABC has fired their longtime reporter Terry Moran with the network for 20-some years. He had tweeted out things about Donald Trump and attack that you can see. This is quoting him. You can see by just looking at him because, this is about Stephen Miller and Donald Trump. This is about Stephen Miller because you can see his hatred is his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. Trump is a world-class hater, but he only does it to glorify himself. That was a bridge too far. And according to ABC, with all the distrust of the media, they had to do something. They said, with the way that the public is distrusting the media, if we don't do something now, we're not going to be able to overcome it.
Yep, they fired him.
Yep,
he's gone.
See ya. Terry Moran, he's been with ABC a long time, right?
26 years, I think it was. They said.
Yeah.
Well, let me just turn this into a lesson. My kids used to always, when they were younger and got to teenage years, they said, "Dad, you can turn anything into a lecture." Okay, if I saw a dead armadillo on the side of the road, I'd say, "Kids, don't take drugs." Okay, so let me make this a social media lesson for you that are listening. Don't send out social media when you're angry. Take a moment, rethink this, because that's the kind of thing that happens when you just send something out without thinking.
The internet is forever.
Angry, you can get in big trouble.
Yep.
All right. We hope you have a mostly peaceful day.
Indeed.
Thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Thanks to Fred, Ed, Steve, Chris, Abe, and Brent Creeley, our producer. Have a great day, everybody. Keep listening to AFR. We're going to be going back to the Holy Land in March of 2026. Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, President of American Family Association and American